Todd, you are doing something I don't think I've seen done before, really, on a scale like this in this space. You had your big booth set up at San Diego Comic-Con. You had a bunch of great covers on display there, and you're cutting them all up and selling them. Tell me how an idea like this comes about.
And well, the genesis is there's two pieces to it, Jim. One is just every year I get a little frustrated that we do these magnificent booth wraps and then essentially throw it in the garbage, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating, and part of it is because the images that we put up on our booth, and I'm usually tied to the Image Comics booth, and you can see that too at Image Comics, and we sort of take whatever's hot at that current time. And we put it up there, and it's sort of like, oh, cool. But every 6 months, whatever is the current hot thing sort of shifts. I mean, it's
Sure.
it's like headlines on that people are talking about,
Right.
and so you're making something that basically has a time span on it. I guess the smart way, well, why don't you just create something that's generic that has just corporate logos on it? That would be the smart way because you could keep reusing those. I just don't think they're quite as interesting to look at for the fan. So as we were talking about the upcoming San Diego Comic-Con, and that frustration come up, like, man, we're going to make another boat. We're just going to throw it away. Also off in sort of the side of my head has a curious creator businessman. Yeah. I just like to look around and see how the world's interacting and what they're doing, right? I don't have to get it. I don't have to endorse it. I don't even have to be part of it. I just have to acknowledge that a portion of a population is in that corner, right? So, I mean, we did NASCAR toys. I've never watched a NASCAR race in my life, but I made NASCAR toys. So
Right. Why?
Because I knew millions and millions of people did. And so I'm beyond that it has to make sense or Todd has to like it. It's not build it and they will come. It's build it, find out where the people are, and go get in their way so they have to run you over. That to me is the Monica. Now, with that said, I kept hearing, just like years prior, it was, Kickstarter this, and then so I tried it. And now I just sort of putting that same experiment onto Whatnot. Hey, Whatnot. I kind of know what it could do and why people were using it, and I couldn't quite figure out the fit as to why I should do it other than I can just make a buck. But then when we got serious about it, we started having a conversation, and I started asking questions. Besides, you can sell and auction stuff off. That's a given. Okay, everybody can do that. What else? What else is valuable on your website? And the big piece for me, Jim, is being able to interact with their community on days in which we're not extracting one single penny from them. Can I just come to your site and interact and have more of a social moment with some of these people? And who cares whether we're buying or selling anything? I can give stuff away that day,
Sure.
but I don't want anything. But you can do, auctions, buy it now. We're hoping to raise money for some philanthropic reasons, a bunch of giveaways, and then the big one for me is the social. So we're starting by going, hey, we got this booth. Why don't we design a booth that looks cool at the show? I think you saw it. It was a nice booth to look at the moment at the show. And then what if we cut it up? Because nobody's going to buy a big 40-foot run. I'm like, no, that's not going to work. So let's make it so we can chop it up and then just see if people want a piece of this sort of one-off item that we made. And oh, by the way, I'll probably throw a bunch of goodies in with the stuff that's in there. Like somebody was asking me, like, well, what do you plan on giving and selling? Like, I don't know. I'm going to do my first live auction. I don't know how it works, Jim. Right. And then I'm just going to scoop stuff off the floor and just say, oh, by the way, this item comes with, and I'm probably randomly going to scoop stuff up and say, and these 3 items come with it. Here, I'll sign 2 of them. I don't know if any of you care about it, but I don't know. Let's just have fun and let's experiment and let's just see how any of this goes and what the benefit of any of this is. And I'll be way smarter with all those answers 4 to 6 months from now.
Well, this kind of community engagement is not, I mean, it's not necessarily something foreign to you because you do not necessarily the giveaway stuff or things like that, but like I've seen you do like art critiques and stuff over on Discord. And so you do a bit of stuff there. And so I got to imagine.
Yeah, I'm doing one in a couple of days where I just go, hey, I'm home alone this weekend. Why don't we all get on the phone, i.e. Discord?
Sure.
And pepper me with whatever questions or whatever is on your mind.
Right.
I don't care. Like to me.
What are some of the things that you've learned, I guess, in doing that, right? Because usually those are kinds of experiences that traditionally you have in person, right? Like at a convention or whatever, but now you're able to kind of do it virtually. And so what has, I guess, made it exciting for you? And what are some of the things that you've learned, I guess, in doing this with
Jim, for me, this is easy. Easy. I don't care how big San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con are.
Sure.
There's 100,000 people at that place at any given time. And the population of the world is over 8 billion.
Right.
Right? There are going to be people who will never, ever be at any one of those shows, ever. Why? Because they don't have the means to get there.
Right.
If they happen to live in North America. Or B, they may have the means for it, but they live in Spain or they live in Germany. It's not a cheap date to go to one of these shows. Right? And as much as you may like it, as much as you may sort of pay attention to and go on the internet and see everything, sort of like the Super Bowl. Lots of people watch the Super Bowl. Very few are ever going to attend one in person.
Right.
So instead of only talking to the people that are in the stadium for the Super Bowl, why don't we see if we can find ways to talk to the people that are watching the Super Bowl? So I don't think it's fair to only give bonuses and value to the people that happen to be fortunate enough for whatever reason to actually be in that room at that given time. You treat them like kings and queens when you are there.
Sure.
But I still know, even when I'm in that room, that there's a kid sitting in Portugal someplace that would love to be in front of me at this exact moment. He or she can't. And so how do we reach those people?
Right.
Even if it's just to say, hey, come up on stage and ask me why I'm not making your favorite toy. I don't care. It doesn't matter because there's a value to saying to that person, because I would have done it to, like, if I was like a young kid, I was a fan, and before I broke into comic books, and somebody said, you can get on the telephone and ask Stan Lee a question, Jack Kirby a question, Wayne Gretzky a question. Oh my gosh, would have been a great day for me.
Yeah.
Right? So I understand that. I haven't forgotten that I didn't have like money to be able to just fly anywhere, and that I was a geek, and that I was young, and that all these moments matter. So how to create more moments for more people in different areas? Potentially, Whatnot is one of those opportunities, just like Discord is one of those.
Right. Of the covers that you're putting up, which one? I'm going to take the Spawn one out of this grouping here. Which one do you think is going to be the hot ticket?
Yeah, I agree. I think Spawn 1 in theory should be the one, but there's always, we got 24, Jim, and I've been there before. There's always that surprise, right? I mean, again, years ago when there was an auction and somebody put in the Spawn, or excuse me, the Spider-Man 1 cover, the one in the couch.
Yep.
I thought that was going to be the most expensive one going that day.
Yeah.
Nope. Amazing Spider-Man 328. I think it was because the guy who didn't get the Crouch Spider-Man 1 said, I'm not leaving unless I get something. And so he jacked up the price. So it's like, it wouldn't have been my bet. If I was in Vegas, I wouldn't have figured that.
Sure.
So my guess is there would probably be a surprise or two, but if I had to lay a bet, And what's the second one? If it's not Spawn #1, I don't have all 24 of them cataloged in my head, but it may be the Gunslinger one, because Gunslinger is a character is coming, and it's from one of the two issues I'm seeing a lot of, because that character is starting to rise.
Right.
And then or Spawn 301.
Yeah.
Because Spawn 301 is sort of a historic sort of book and has meaning. Yep. And I did it, and I'm the one who's going to be signing these, so you get a Todd art with Todd's signature that might be a little more meaningful than if you bought something by another artist that I signed or something like that. So I don't know. Off the top of my head, that'd be my guess.
All right. I'm going to ask you just 2 or 3 more Spawn questions, and I'll let you go. You teased a big announcement coming soon.
I did
in the video game space. What can you tease? What more nuggets of little teases can I get there?
Now, we were going to make the announcement. I mean, everybody was planning on making the announcement, both myself and the company I'm dealing with. We're going to make the announcement at New York Comic Con, right? Oh. Here's our peeps. It'd be a great time to do it. But then it was like, oh yeah, that's right. My son's getting married that weekend, so I'm not going to be there. So we're having that conversation right now. When do we do it? Right? There's an off chance that maybe we come in and do it on the Wednesday or Thursday that week, and then I got to get back home if I can even get away. But if not, I mean, the tease is just quite simple, that there are big brands out in the marketplace, and from time to time I get to interact with them, and this is one that came a little bit out of the blue. I wasn't canvassing for it, so and I haven't even actually. Now that you asked the question, I should probably ask them why me? Why me? Why not? And the answer might just be the simple. Well, we asked 25 other people. We've already done them. You're number 27. So maybe I really don't want to know, or everybody had said no, and I don't know, right?
Right, fair.
But it's interesting because I just had a meeting with them the other day, and they were showing me a bunch of the visuals that all turned out really cool. And I think that they were planning on a 45-minute hour session. I think we were done in 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Because, I keep having to remind them that although they're a big corporation, and they've dealt with other characters from other big corporations, I'm not. I'm here, let's just do cool stuff. And they show me cool stuff, and I go, oh man, that looks good. Maybe the cape a little bit redder,
right?
Or maybe the towel's a little bit or whatever. It's just silly stuff, right?
Sure.
But I'm like, cool. I'd want that. Cool. But even more so, I'm saying to them exactly what I told the people when Spawn was in Mortal Kombat 11. Like, stop worrying about pleasing Todd. I think this is going to be a detriment a little bit. You guys are already fans. You're going to keep enough of the mojo of Spawn, because to me, if you do the word cloud of Spawn, it's badass dude, right?
Yeah,
just
right.
Keep, if you nail badass, if the people that are designing it in your own facility would go, shoot, I'm not even a Spawn fan, but I want this dude in my game. Then that's it. And so they're going, oh, so you. And I think it always happens, Tim, let me say. They're always going, yeah, everybody says that, right? And then you try and do it, and then the big corporations sort of push back, right?
Right.
I think they're a little shocked that they sort of at the meeting sort of show me something they think this is a little bit crazy. They even start with sort of disclaimers. It's a little bit crazy. And then I go, oh man. Anyway, you can make that bigger. So, again, I'm just
right.
Can you add twice as much of that, right?
Yep.
Or whatever. And I think there's a little bit. I can tell by sort of the smirks on their faces, going, "Oh my God, this guy's he's gonna sign off on all of this, right?" And the answer is yes, as long as it looks cool,
right?
And And if not, then like I said, I'm tweaking it. But
Sure.
for people that play video games, I guarantee you've heard of this game.
Fair.
Like,
So, but like it's one of those things when even like when using Mortal Kombat as a perfect example, right? When it was announced that Spawn was going to be in that, fans lost their mind, right? What and like since then, like look, I ask you all the time, like when are we getting more Spawn type video game things? And here we are, something's coming up. Do you think this cracks the door open a little bit more for more of those kinds of opportunities? Because you said like they came to you, you weren't necessarily looking out for it, or is it one of those things where like you still kind of want to be a little bit more restrictive on who gets what and where it goes from there?
Yeah, it doesn't for sure, it doesn't hurt, right?
Sure.
And again, it puts your character on a map. Like anytime a brand that's way bigger than Spawn
Right.
is willing to put a spotlight on your character, right?
Yep.
You take those opportunities. So and then again, if there's success that goes with it,
Yep.
right? Then yes, other companies will pay attention, going, because again, my window of them being able to use Spawn, opens and closes, right? And
right.
I can go do it again, and then you just weigh that against, to your question about doing video games that have the Spawn character, and is it just about sort of the existence of the character and sort of his mythology of what he's been doing in the comic book, and you and I keep talking about it, and it seems like forever, but eventually that movie's coming. And
well, that's what I mean. I mean, look, this is a big franchise, lots of big awareness.
But I think it's like Walking Dead. I think like Walking Dead, the one thing that Robert Kirkman was able to do that worked was he was able to do product that appealed to people who liked the show.
Right.
Then he just did Walking Dead cool stuff.
Right.
Which was basically based on his IP.
Sure.
Not the television show.
Right.
I think Spawn's going to, in the past will fall into that category. We'll be able to do stuff that maybe is a cool version that makes sense, maybe based on some of the elements of whatever medium we do. But then there's also going to be opportunities to sort of do video games that are like, look at this, nothing to do with TV, movies, cartoons, nothing. This is just, let's go crazy in the Spawn world, right? I think both of those be there, and depending on the success of prior videos and or anything that happens in medium, then those phone calls just are automatic because it becomes low-hanging fruit.
The other thing you did at San Diego was announce a few more books kind of in the Spawnverse. And so I'm more curious to, when we first spoke about you expanding the Spawn line a little bit, you had a very clear idea on like the books that you wanted to do. Are these new books, these new books part of that original plan, or were they like, your Sam and Twitch and things like that, were they like, oh, okay, we're seeing real success here and we think we can add tell a story in a different corner of the Spawn universe, and so we'll go with this?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter of what you just said, that I'm not necessarily interested in having 20 books that are all House Spawn related characters, right?
Sure.
I mean, for some, I think they're cool. Like I think Medieval Spawn at some point should get his own miniseries. She Spawn should get a miniseries or something, but I don't know if I need 8, 9, 10 different books that are basically Batman characters, Superman, Spider-Man characters. They're all sort of in the same family.
Right.
So like anything else, to your point, you need to go into, this is sort of this Spawn that we all know. Yes, I got to start painting on this canvas in different colors. That can be offshoot stuff. Sam and Twitch can literally, and when I explain Sam and Twitch to people, I go, no, this has to be either 100% detective story,
right,
or 93% detective story with a little bit of fantasy, supernatural bent to it. It's not a supernatural book. I've got plenty of those. This is for people who are like, Spawn's okay, but you know what? I like sort of true crime.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, by the way, they happen to actually be characters that sort of are in the same spot, in the same space. So I'm not going to have any sort of meaningful growth with characters, or even being able to put characters that that sort of have some meaning and impact, unless I experiment and get away from a couple of tried and true formulas. So, I mean, superhero is a big, broad word, so I can bring in other superheroes, which I'm planning. There's a couple others that we've got coming out that we didn't even announce. And I'm not, and the other thing too is I'm not looking to put out a lot. We just had a conversation, Jim, about like, when do we want to put these out? Because I don't want to just expand for the sake of expanding. I'll let other people. I need to do it in a meaningful way, in which I feel confident that each one of these books does have a reason for existing, and not assuming that everybody's going to collect them all. Because I had this weird and sort of conversation internally with some of my people, and they were like, "Yeah, well, Todd, if you put out too many books, you might cannibalize your own books and whatever else." I'm like, "What? Like, shoot, that's not how we should be looking at this, especially if we're giving different flavors, right? What we should be looking at is, if I put out a quality book that they haven't read and seen before, or is enjoyable, that either will be an add-on to whatever it is they buy, not only with my stuff, but Marvel, DC, and everybody else's stuff. Or, which is what I used to do, I can only afford to buy 20 comic books in a month, and I'm getting a little disenchanted with numbers 18, 19, and 20. And along comes another comic book that is intriguing. Oh, I'm going to stop buying that comic book. I'm hoping it's a competitor's book. and I'll pick up your book. Okay, right? Like, no, if we do our job, it shouldn't be that if they want to add it, they got to put down another Spawn. Put down one of the shitty Marvel, DC, Boom, Dark Horse books. I'm hoping. And I'm assuming they cross their fingers in reverse.
Right. No, of course.
There's no malice here. We're just all biased to our own product.
Right. Are we on the road to maybe an event of some sort with some of these books?
Well, we're headed to issue 350 on Spawn.
Yep.
So that'd be a double-sized one, and it's going to culminate in a story that's been going on for a while. So it's sort of going to put a bit of a cap on this ongoing story. The event question you're asking is again another interesting one, Jim. So because and this is this one that's always weird. To me, an event was like if like two annuals would cross over.
Right.
When I was a kid, like, oh my gosh, I can get this annual and that annual, and they're going to cross over. The Avengers annual and the Marvel 2-in-1 annual that came over, that basically had some of the Thanos stuff that like everybody knows. But back then it was like, oh my gosh, Jim Starlin. To me, that was like an event, right? Or event to me was like Dark Knight's coming up.
Right?
Watchmen's coming up. What I was less enamored with was I liked stuff like Crisis on Infinite Earths. I like that because I was a huge George Perez fan.
Yeah.
But what I didn't like, and I was actually doing one of the books at that time, called Infinite Incorporated, was that then they somehow tied it to every other book. Right. In the company. And I'm just like, I don't know. I was never into that. It always bugged me, even as a fan. And I'm just being personal about it. Why do I have to buy those 4 titles that I've never bought that I think aren't very good, just so I can get completion of this story? I know why they're doing it. Right. Good capitalism. But I felt like I was being manipulated a little bit. Right. That's fair. So we've had this conversation of, hey, maybe we should do an event and intertwine all the books and whatever. And I'm like, dude, yeah. You know what? Let's just start with putting out good books that people want. Right. And then we'll worry about whether there's any valid reason. And then even if we've got 10 books at that point, maybe it might only apply to 5 of them or 4
Right.
I
Sure.
don't know.
Or maybe, like you said, you've got 350 coming up, and maybe you put some commercials in that to get some people to maybe try some of the other books, and then you go.
That's how it used to work. Remember,
right?
You get books, and then they'd put like the little trailer of 5 pages that going to be continued in,
right?
Whatever, Dazzler #1 coming soon, right?
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe I just got too much old school.
No, that's fair.
In my head, but it's bothersome to me when events tie into 40 other books.
Sure. One other event kind of thing that I think it's been a very long time since I think I've asked you about this. Yeah. We don't have really an anniversary or we have a sort of an anniversary coming up necessarily on the Image Comics front. What are the odds that maybe someday at some point you and the guys say, hey, let's finish Image United? Does that happen? Is that going to happen or no? Is that in the rearview mirror?
I would say there's a chance. I think the chance is small, but there's a chance. And the way is, if I was going to bet on it, the way to get there is not necessarily that we have to get all the boys back together, because everybody might have moved on, and as time goes by, maybe even one of us isn't even standing on the earth, so you can't have your band reunion anymore.
Yeah,
which was the first thought I had when I heard the news of John Lennon.
Right,
it was like, wow, the Beatles would never be together again.
Yeah,
but and I'm not saying we're the Beatles.
No. So, but it's fine. It's an appropriate analogy.
I'm using a big example, but
right.
I think what is more likely is that 2 or 3 of us may take up the torch and just finish it because we want to finish it, and just do the rest of the work and not worry about whether everything else doing, which is what got it bogged around, moving around. Got their life. So I think that's fair. I think that's the bet. If I was going to Vegas, that's the bet of how it gets done.
All right. Last question for you. We've seen, it's a toy question. We've seen a lot in other lines and with other companies doing that. And you did it with your first Kickstarter figure. Retro packaging, updated versions, classic figures. Think we'd ever get something like that from the Spawn line?
Yes. I mean, we actually oddly had a conversation about that. I think it was yesterday. I'm going, hey, for some of the stuff that we can sell on our own internet and or that we're selling through internet, where we can do it, then we're asking the question, why not? Why don't we go and do some of that, right? Sure. I mean, for people listening, the reason that we don't do it anymore, unfortunately, is because if you remember, we used to have like a lot of our packaging, we had figure, and then we had this flange. We had this flange next to it that was like this cool big piece of art a lot of time. I mean, it was just all figure and all plastic. But for the most part, we were doing like, here's the toy and here's a little bit of art, right? But the reality of it is that art is just empty space. And the retailers go, if you cut that off, Todd, I can move my pegs instead of only having 2 figures this far apart, because you got a flange, you got artwork in between. If you're doing figure, why don't you cut all the art off and then do figure, and just put figures next to each other, right? So unfortunately, I guess depending on whose side of the fence you're talking about, it's a dollars per square inch calculus. And they just go, we're not here selling air. We're here selling items. Cut that off. Get your boxes tighter. And oh, by the way, we're going to dictate box sizes. You know? So if you want them to even be in our store, so you're a little bit of a slave to their rules.
Sure.
And that's it. But now that we have the internet, we can go outside. The answer is like, yeah, we're not beholden to those rules. So why don't we do more of that? And that was actually the topic of conversation. So I'm glad you brought it up.
I love it. Sweet. Awesome. Well, Todd, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. And we'll be sure to tune in to your Big Whatnot stream on August 23rd.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Like I said, the experiment is about to begin.
Awesome.